sacred space where you will be guided to meet your innermost self for the very first time. She will awaken, evolve, and rise to new depths of unpaved territory, accepting herself wholly. I am your host, Madison Schrader. It is such a privilege to be sitting down with Rachel today, who is a creative dance therapist and transpersonal counsellor. She helps people to unlock, shift, and heal stored trauma and memory of the body, enabling a more authentic and fulfilling life.
Thank you for that beautiful welcome. If you don't mind, the first thing I'd like to do is just acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we are talking on and connecting to today, which is the Wurundjeri people, and respecting elders past, present and future, any Indigenous people that may be in the room or who live on this property. So I thought I'd just start with that, especially if we are going to talk about dance as a healing means and how we are coming back to this really sacred and almost ancient knowledge.
That acknowledgement is so important. So I really appreciate you starting with that. Now, some of you would know that dancing is like nothing else to me. It is my soul on the outside, the truest expression of who I am at my core. So when Rachel said yes to coming on the podcast, I literally did a happy dance around my living room because I just know that she is going to offer so much here for all of you. Dancing is practiced as a means of coming closer to spirit, to encounter the divine, and as an expression of that relationship that already exists. Rachel, my fellow dancing lover, when we first connected, you described your practices as alternative therapies, and you said that even though dance, movement, and art has been a healing practice since the beginning of time, we are only just now beginning to remember again. This really stayed with me. It's so beautiful. It's so simple, but it's so deep. Would you mind elaborating on this in a little more detail?
One thing that I think has stood out for me about how dance was utilised in our traditional communities was that it wasn't just a method of healing, it was a method of prevention. So it was really instigated and normalised in our everyday life for many reasons, such as birth, deaths, harvesting, transitions, ceremonies such as coming of age, weddings. It wasn't something that was thought about. It was something that was very intrinsically born into everyday life and born into the culture of how community is and how we operated. And I felt like that was done so as a container for us. So it really did help us understand our physical boundaries and also the boundaries of others. It helped us create that positive relationship with ourselves from day one so that we would feel safe within ourselves. And when we feel safe within ourselves, we build a safe world. We build a safe community. We want safety for others. So however dance made us feel about ourselves, we then wanted to share that with others. So it built a really harmonious, equal, just, empathetic, loving community. I mean, of course, nothing's ever perfect, things will happen, but I feel like even then, dance was a means of resolution. We came back to those roots that dance had instilled in us from day one to be able to hone in on, to move through things, to get through life. So it's almost like dance was a seed, you know, and it grew throughout our lives in every different way, in every single thing that we did, and it held us. It held us together and it helped us to grow.
Absolutely. I think you've raised a really good point in regards to how often we use dance in so many aspects of our lives. And I don't think that people even really notice, to be honest. I think it's underestimated how powerful dance can be. And as you said, we use it in celebrations, births, deaths, so many different pivotal points in our lives come back to dance and movement and art. I know for me, I use dance no matter how I'm feeling. It can be that I'm happy and I'll dance. I can be angry and I will scream while I dance, and I will just let that emotion free itself. I have cried so many times while dancing. Sometimes it'll be that I'm already crying. Other times it'll be that I will burst out into tears whilst dancing. It gives that energy somewhere to go. So, how does dance help us to heal? And more specifically, how can a person with anxiety benefit from dancing?
I suppose similar to the transgenerational trauma investigation, it's about being able to non-verbally work with sensations and emotions that are stuck in the body, to be able to understand. You make a link as to what it could be linked to be able to then either break that link or try and make sense of it. So we get to see our own patterns, we get to see our triggers in a really safe space. So we then get to make a relationship with that trigger and what it might need. It's almost like holding it. It's almost like nurturing it. When we move with it, we're giving it love. We're not trying to hide it away. Yeah. And because sometimes we don't know what anxiety is, it is just a feeling. There might not be a thought form behind it. It's just feelings that are in our body. We get to create a more positive relationship with the body in all its states. And that's the inaugural, that's the foundations of dance movement therapy, that we produce a better relationship with the self, therefore others. And creating a better relationship with ourselves isn't just the parts that we like, isn't just the joy and excitement. It's those parts that we may feel a little bit like, I don't want this, or this isn't mine, or whatever attitude we might have. It is about working with that inner attitude so that it affects our outer attitude. It's about, loving and nurturing all parts of our inner world so we become confident and we normalize all of our different states. So it's not just the label of anxiety, it's also the label of fear, anger, jealousy, despair, sadness, as well as joy, excitement. It takes away those labels and we just feel sensation. So there's no longer that judgment, because I think the judgment when we start to feel something can also be the ripple effect into anxiety and other mental health conditions. And I'm starting to not like the term mental health, just because I feel like it does then derive another stigma. It does then also make us feel like, well, this is a category of emotions that is abnormal, that I shouldn't be having. They're negative, they're bad. Well, that's going to cause anxiety then.
Yeah.
So it's about kind of taking all the feelings that we might be feeling that leads to an anxious state and just loving them as much as we do everything else. It's all about that positive relationship with the holistic self. Yeah. That's the basis of dance movement therapy.
100%. I think you touched on a very heavy point. The world that we're living in, I feel like society has created these labels and this stigma around the umbrella topic mental health. I think it's very important that when we're diagnosing, we don't pigeonhole and categorize people. We need to remember that we're also individual, and each individual is unique and special for their own reason. And I think because of these labels and these categories that we're pigeonholed into, we then name call to ourselves and to others. And I know for me, I used to refer to myself as a freak, and that is so hurtful. I feel bad. I feel guilty for saying that to myself, because I'm not a freak. But it was because I do certain things and I feel certain things, and they're not seen as normal. They're seen as different. They're seen as outcast. And that made me believe that I must have been a freak. But on that note, I think we will move on to what I know you are especially passionate about, and that is generational trauma and generational cycles.
Yes, so transgenerational trauma and intergenerational trauma or is the trauma, memories, experiences that we are born with. So they're passed through generations biologically. So there's pretty much no way of avoiding it through talking about it, in the sense that because it is part of our physical makeup. So maybe I should backtrack a little bit on that. So it's passed on through our genes, through our biology. So for example, the liver, which carries a lot of emotions. It can even be in muscle joints. It can even be in bones. And this is scientifically proven. We don't carry memories just in the brain. We carry more memory in our bodily sensations than what we do in the mind, because the mind can't possibly cope with all of that. Can you imagine? It's too much. It's just not how it's developed. It's not what it was made for. We weren't made for trauma. And so it's the body. It's how we hold on to sensations and feelings, and how they can then stay with us and possibly sometimes even disease us when it's not relinquished. So because it's a feeling and sensation in the body, because it's non-verbal, we rely on things like body-based practices to be able to literally move it, and then it becomes conscious, because before that it's unconscious material in the body. So what dance does is it provides a platform for the body to talk, basically. We can have different ways of intervening through movement sequences and things like that, or we can provide a space for a person to just instigate a way of moving by using different artistic props to tell their story, which then gives the body an ability to give form to that trauma, that experience, that memory, and then we establish a healing conclusion. So we rewire that neuro pattern from being that trauma story through a healing conclusion into being something that we've gained the wisdom from. We've completed that movement in the body. So it comes from being trauma to being a lesson, to being wisdom, to being empathy, to being compassion, to being love, whatever it needs to be. The body has talked about it, and so it can then integrate and move forward.
And I guess once we've transformed that, we can learn how to break the cycle.
Precisely, because we become mindful, it becomes conscious.
Yeah.
So once we're conscious of something, we have choices. So then we also learn what the cycle has been. We're able to, as it comes to consciousness, we can then talk about it more, we can then give it more form. So then we can work out strategies. We can work out further interventions. It becomes embodied, so it becomes mindful. So we can start to see the pattern, and then we know how to work with it. So the trauma is not in the driver's seat anymore. We are.
Probably a silly question, but would you recommend dance as a form of meditation? Because most people see meditation as something where you're sitting still and you're calm and you're quiet and not moving. But it can be so different to that. It can be the complete opposite.
Very much so. It's sometimes I won't be able to lie on the mat and stay still. Sometimes there is an energy in my body, and I find that that's just me. I'm an energetic person, you know, and for a while there I thought that was a negative part of me, and now I realize no, it's not, because in that energy when I move it, I get a lot of wisdom, I get a lot of insight that is helpful for others. I get a lot of self-love, therefore love for others. I get a lot of inspiration and imagination. There's like a gold mine in our various states. So if meditation is something that at different times of our lives or our week or our day might be a little bit tricky to navigate, movement, because meditation is whatever brings you to that present moment. Whatever brings you into your body in that present moment is consciousness. Right? That's how a dance movement therapist, one of my lecturers, described it to me. That's what consciousness is, being in your body in the present moment. And that's the purpose of meditation. So if you're able to obtain that through movement, through any body-based therapies, then that's the purpose of you meditating being achieved anyway.
And much the same as your energetic energy, but coming from a different perspective, The anxiety energy that's in my body and my mind doesn't allow my mind to quieten very often, if ever. I overanalyze, I overthink, so I can't sit and be still. So, movement meditation and dancing is my strongest form of meditation. And that doesn't mean you have to be a professional dancer or an elite dancer. I don't want anyone listening thinking, oh, well, I can't dance, so that won't work for me. Absolutely not true. It does not matter how good or how bad you are at dancing. It's just about the movement, allowing that stagnant energy to release and to shift, and for that emotion to have that platform. And as Rachel said, it brings you back to the present moment and it makes you conscious of the present. So for me, I sit in the past way too often. I reflect on what could have been but wasn't. I reflect on what I would change, what I would do differently, how my life would have ended up if I made different choices. And then at the same time, I sit in the future thinking about worrying about what's going to happen, thinking about what if, thinking about things I can't control. So when I dance, all of that goes away and I come back to the present moment. I'm conscious of now and I'm reminded to live for now. And I just focus on the feeling that it gives me. That's it from us today. But before we go, I just want to say the biggest thank you to Rachel for your wisdom, your guidance, and your purity. It has honestly been such a blessing having you here. And my mind and heart are just exploding now with creative juices. And I can't wait to get back in my studio and just let go and move.
Thank you so much. I suppose I just want to say thank you to you and how much I admire what you're doing and how important this work is of normalizing all of this, so people realize that it's okay, to talk about this. It's okay to feel like this. It's okay to be like this. This is actually part of the human existence. It's all part of it. And, our experiences, what we're moving through, what we're healing, whatever you want to call it, it's our gift to the world. Don't shut it away. Don't hide it away. Don't be ashamed. It's your beauty. It's your ability to connect to a wider range of people. Your stories need to be danced or told or created or whatever it is, because it inspires others to do the same. And that's the kind of world that we want. Unconditional love.
Thank you so much, Rachel. It is honestly a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much to everybody who has tuned in. I hope you enjoyed and gained so much from episode 3 of Anxiety Is Not Me. Anxiety Is Not Me is a place for all of us to share and to feel inclusive. If you would like to share your story, please reach out to me, sending you energy of love and peace as you become more aware of your inner light with every breath. Bye.